about the problems of this legal system that we're trying to work within. Professor.
Mr. Chairman and colleagues, my presentation is that the international legal system as it exists today has been created in the last 25 years. And it is in this period that the entire Nuremberg principles and the Charter have been set aside. So therefore, before we strategize, you have to look on the ground as to what is this that was created in this quarter of a century, which moved us away from the Nuremberg principles. Because you have a situation, we are back to the gates of hell. We are in a similar situation to where we were in the 1930s, 1920s and 1930s. No different. Successive wars of aggression, overt and covert, and an international legal system which has been constructed to give impunity to major war criminals whilst lining up the usual suspects of some African countries and the former head of Yugoslavia before tribunals. So is it that we were carried away as lawyers by the exalted promises made at Nuremberg? And is it that the dissenting judgment of Judge Pal, Radha Gobind Pal, at the Far East trials, where he said that the manner in which these tribunals have been constituted is victor's justice. He says, can we have an international system of justice which does not arraign Western colonization for the crimes that have been committed, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and does not take into account the US ultimatum to Japan, which was one of the causes also of the war in the Far East? He says, if we do this, and we only arraign the so-called victors, then we are not creating a system of justice. And I'm afraid it is this dissenting judgment which is haunting us today. Because the acceptance of the Nuremberg principles was based on two propositions. One, the solemn undertaking given by Robert Jackson, that we are giving an undertaking before this tribunal that the United States will be bound equally by what is decided at this tribunal. That is a doctrine of estoppel. In law we term it at estoppel, that if you make a statement against your interests, it is binding. So it was binding on the United States, binding on the UK, it is binding today on the NATO powers, but it is no longer a part of the international legal system. The second was that waging a war of aggression is the supreme crime, because it contains within itself the evil of the whole. What does it mean? It means that the crimes of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity are automatically an extension of the war of aggression. But what happens when you throw out the crime of war of aggression from the international legal system which you have today, and you have a hollow framework without the substance? Now, what is the real reason why this international legal system moving away from Nuremberg could be constructed? Because at the end of the Cold War and the capitulation of the entire socialist bloc, no matter how the buffer was removed entirely in the international system, it was no longer a balanced international legal system. It became an international system where a particular economic system dominated by financial and corporate oligopolies could use their governments to secure resources, whether it is oil, whether it is the opium and heroin drug trade being laundered into major financial institutions, whether it is gold of Libya being lifted off or the Ukraine, whether it is the financial deposits of smaller countries in foreign banks, nothing is safe from the financial and corporate oligopolies. And they are using their governments for war. Of that there must be a realization. Because sometimes we simplistically say US government and UK. Yes, they are there, but they are being manipulated by a particular financial system which after the Cold War started misusing the UN Charter, distorting the UN Charter and creating a new legal system. And this is, I have to read out what a senior diplomat of the UK, what he described as the new situation. And this is what he said because it's important. He said in his essay, The New Liberal Imperialism, please don't forget, this is a senior diplomat of the UK writing an essay on the new liberal imperialism because the phase we are in is a new recolonization of all the smaller countries which have resources. Amongst ourselves, says Robert Cooper, we operate on the basis of laws. That is, within NATO, we operate on the basis of laws. But when dealing with more old-fashioned kind of states, outside the postmodern conditions of Europe, we need to revert to rougher methods of an earlier era. What are the rough methods? Force, preemptive attack, deception. What form should intervention take, he says? The most logical way and the one most employed is colonization. Though the opportunities, perhaps even the need for colonization is as great as it was in the 19th century. What is needed is a new kind of imperialism. First, there is the voluntary imperialism of the global economy. He says it straight. This is usually operated by a global consortium through international financial institutions such as the IMF, World Bank, and is characteristic of the new imperialism. The second form of postmodern imperialism may be called the imperialism of neighbors. That is, you intervene wherever you want to intervene because you are affected as a neighbor. A camouflage. And this is what Prime Minister Tony Blair said. 20 years ago, we would not have been fighting in Kosovo. The fact that we are engaged is the result of a wide range of changes. The end of the Cold War, the world has changed in a fundamental way. Globalization has transformed our economies. But globalization is not just economic. It is also a political and security phenomenon. Many of our problems are caused by the other side of the world. Financial instability in Asia disturbs jobs even in my own constituency. Our armed forces have been busier than usual. Yes, sorry. Our armed forces have been busier than usual, delivering humanitarian aid, deterring attacks on defenseless people, backing up UN resolutions, and occasionally engaging in wars, as we did in the Gulf in '91 and are currently doing in the Balkans. Where Iraq is important is that it was the watershed. It was with Iraq, it was with the first Gulf War in Iraq and the sanctions imposed on Iraq that the new international legal system began with complete distortions of the UN Charter. What could not be read into the UN Charter was being read into the United Nations Charter. And sanctions were war by hunger imposed on the Iraqi people. And you had a Security Council where Russia had become an appendage of Western financial institutions. It had capitulated under President Boris Yeltsin. It was down and out. China had acquiesced in an arrangement of rapid capitalist development of China and had entered into a most favored nation treatment with the United States and Europe. So there was no opposition whatsoever. And there you see a situation where the Security Council imposes sanctions on Iraq, saying that they have aggressed into Kuwait. Even after immediate withdrawal, the sanctions continue. Thereafter, it is weapons of mass destruction. This is by countries whose arsenals are full of weapons of mass destruction. The United States, NATO, Israel can destroy all of us several times over. And they are saying and talking about weapons of mass destruction in small countries like Iraq and elsewhere, posing a threat to peace. After the first Gulf War and the highway of death, the entire Iraq army was in a state of total dispersal. Where was the threat? But this is not all. It is not only Chapter 7 which is misused. Thereafter, Chapter 7 is further misused to create special tribunals. And special tribunal for Israel, I can understand. In violation of all resolutions of the United Nations Security Council and General Assembly. No special tribunal for Israel. No special tribunal for the United States, which has military bases all over the world. No special tribunal for the UK waging a war somewhere in Latin America or somewhere else. Special tribunal for Yugoslavia, former, and Rwanda, because this was a strategy of Lebensraum. We've heard Lebensraum before the Second World War. Not living space, but economic space. These are all resource wars. Lebensraum, former Yugoslavia, was to be fragmented because each little unit was to be opened up for investment, for markets. So any unit declaring secession was recognized. Croatia, Slovenia, every unit was recognized. Islamist fighters were provided by some Islamic countries. So-called Islam is against war. That is why it's known as Islam, which means peace. So Islamist countries were supplied fighters through NATO to Kosovo and Bosnia. And the Yugoslav army was put on the complete defensive. Everyone was encouraged. Each group was encouraged to attack the other. And a special tribunal was set up for Yugoslavia in '93 with an open-ended jurisdiction that it will cover, but what crimes? War crimes and crimes against humanity from '91 onwards. Open-ended. I have never heard of a tribunal where you have open-ended from '91 onwards. Because it was to cover the entire period of the balkanization of a federal state, of the former federal state, which was a member of the United Nations, for the simple reason, and here all NATO powers were collaborating. On the other hand, in Rwanda, there was a conflict going on between the United States and France with their own economic interests in Rwanda. And therefore, you had one-sided narrative. In Yugoslavia, it was made out all that it's the Serbs, it is the Serbs, it is the Serbs. And then some small cases were opened up against Croatian generals, etc. They've been acquitted. In Rwanda, it was that only the Hutus have committed genocide on the Tutsis. The situation was quite different. Both sides. Yes, there was genocide on the Tutsis, but equally, the Tutsis, the advancing Rwandan Patriotic Front, headed by the RPF leader and the present president of Rwanda, they had also committed atrocities, crimes against humanity and war crimes, and continued to do so in the eastern Congo. But the conflict between the US was backing the RPF, and France was marginalized. France was backing the previous regime. And their international conflicts were playing out and was a major cause of the genocide. And what happened in Rwanda? Now, what is interesting when I say that the Nuremberg principles have been set aside, you will say, what Nuremberg principles? In the constitution of the Special Tribunal of Rwanda and Yugoslavia, which was set up by resolutions of the Security Council. They were set up by resolutions. There is no provision in the UN Charter for setting up judicial or quasi-judicial tribunals. That's why I said a new international legal system was being constructed in a partisan manner. There's no provision. Under what? That these are subsidiary organs of the Security Council. Subsidiary organs do not provide for judicial or quasi-judicial. You can read the whole United Nations Charter. You can read the whole United Nations Charter. Yeah, slow. Yes, okay. Right. Yeah. So, in the UN Charter, there is no provision for any quasi or judicial tribunal. Distortion, misinterpretation of the UN Charter, like in Iraq. And what happened to the supreme crime? Waging a war of aggression, what happened? It is nowhere there in the statute for Yugoslavia. It is nowhere there in the statute for Rwanda. And this is what the person who drafted those two charters for those two tribunals, the statutes, this is what he said. Michael Scharf, who has been referred to earlier by Curtis Dubler. This is what he said. There was a clear consensus that the US would not support the inclusion of crimes against peace, which is the supreme crime of waging a war of aggression, in the statute of the ICTY, that's Yugoslavia, notwithstanding the Nuremberg precedent. So if you think that I'm imagining that the Nuremberg principles were set aside in the new international legal system constructed in the last 25 years, well, this is evidence from one who has drafted the statute. In the final analysis, the United States government, which had been accused by human rights groups and several governments of committing crimes against peace with respect to recent military invasions, such as the '89 invasion of Panama, did not want the ICTY to exercise jurisdiction over this offense, despite what Robert Jackson said, leading to precedents that might hamper similar US military efforts. Similarly, the International Criminal Court Statute, when it was adopted, has no crime of aggression. The review conference held in Kampala says that we are amending, defining it, but in 2017, after that we may consider it, and that any country can exclude itself from this crime of aggression. Whereas the United States has gone and signed 120 impunity agreements and has passed the American Servicemen's Protection Act, which is also called the Hague Invasion Act, which means, yes, it's called the Hague Invasion Act colloquially. American Servicemen's Protection Act. That is, if anyone is arrested by the ICI who happens to be either a civilian or military personnel of the United States or even someone functioning on their behalf, they can launch a rescue operation against the Hague. Therefore, where do we stand? And who is being sent before the tribunal? 8 countries of Africa. Libya was referred, the previous government of Gaddafi was referred, for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Not those who bombed Libya, because there's no crime of aggression which exists today in so-called international law, except that they say that they shall consider it. Does it mean that the Nuremberg Charter does not exist? And finally, before I conclude, I wish to say there's a special responsibility on the citizens of those countries who have committed aggression, like the United States, NATO, Israel, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. You must start planning to try your own citizens who have committed these very serious crimes and devastated the world. Because today it is a seizure of resources from other countries. Tomorrow, it has already started, is the seizure of your own bank accounts. These are two sides of the same coin. Fascistic measures inside a country and war outside are two parts of the same whole. And I would like to give you the example of the Bangladesh War Crimes Tribunal, where after decades they set up a national war crimes tribunal and they tried their citizens who had collaborated in the 3 million genocide and collective rape of lakhs of women, etc. I conclude by paying a homage to the martyrs of the Iraqi resistance who achieved all their aims. It is unfortunate that there is a quisling government of President Maliki brought in by the occupation. And in conclusion, I wish to say, recalling the period before the Second World War, I wish to remember the sacrifices made by the Spanish Republican forces, and to quote one of their outstanding leaders, La Pasionara, the miner's daughter, who said, "Non passaran, they shall not pass."
Wow. 2 speakers who can keep to the time allotted. Fantastic. Now there is an opportunity to ask for questions. We have about 13